So we have two awesome events in June. And here's the thing. We know that you want to come, but you just can't bring yourself to push that click here, right? That little RSVP thing, that little, I know, it's like such an emotionally taxing task to go to the calendar and click the RSVP button, but we need your help. If you're coming, we want to have you. Make sure to RSVP. We want to know to expect you. Hope you enjoy the podcast. I'm Rabbi Patrick, and welcome to Kihila. As some of you might have noticed, it was a few years ago, I went through a bit of a season where I talked a lot about the work of an author who I truly appreciate named Johann. He wrote Lost Connections, which I'll talk a little bit about in this podcast. He also wrote a really interesting book on Ozempic called Magic Pill. He's working on a piece, it seems like it'll never get done, the book on Las Vegas, something related to the history of Las Vegas. He's an interesting person because what he does as an author is he puts himself in the story. It's a bit of a gonzo journalism, mixed with a lot of speaking to different experts and things like that. He did one where he completely disconnected from the internet and social media and all of these other things. It was really interesting. Anyway, great author, Johann. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of his work, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the Garden of Eden. And it's going to be an adventure because what I want to know is what are we supposed to be doing here? Right? This interesting thing about being a human, right? What's it about? And how are we supposed to be spending our time? And why does any of this matter? So let's take a minute, set our common note, set our intentions. Yeah. And the piece I'm going to read, this is Bereshit, this is Genesis 1:26. And God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, after our likeness. They shall rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the cattle, the whole earth, and all the creeping things that creep on earth." Yeah, buddy. So you're probably like, yeah, it's really inspirational there, Rabbi. What you got for us? But I promise this one's gonna be fun. Okay, so going back to Johann, and yeah, I'm gonna fanboy on this one, and you're just gonna have to suffer that because you get what you pay for. He wrote this book, Lost Connections. He wrote another really great book. I mentioned it earlier, where he decided to not be on the internet, not use social media. It's called Stolen Focus. Big fan of Stolen Focus. Anyway, let me stop fanboying for a minute. Let me get back to it here. So rates of depression are skyrocketing. And it's, in my layperson, entirely unprofessional opinion, I am completely unqualified to say this, but I'm going to anyway. I think that a lot of this is not due to a sudden lack of serotonin and dopamine in our brains. I think it's due to a loss of our humanity. It's due to a loss of our humanity. So to answer the question rather quickly, what do we owe ourselves? What do we owe this world? What's this life thing all about? I would say simply that we owe ourselves and each other our humanity. But what does any of that mean, right? What does any of that have to do with Judaism, right? The answer is in the text there, Bereshit. But it's also in social science, and that's where I go into this book, Lost Connections. Now, in this book, Johann looks at these different factors that are causing depression. And I want to pull out 3 of these that I think I do have some right. Again, I'm a layperson here. I am not a psychiatrist, but just, 3 things that resonate with me as a spiritual leader that I feel I am qualified to talk about. A disconnection from meaningful values, a disconnection from meaningful work, and perhaps more importantly, a disconnection from others. So those three things out of the 9 or so factors that Hari finds are causing depression in our modern life, these three are the three that I want to talk to you about where I feel I can make a contribution. So a disconnection from meaningful values, meaningful work, and overall disconnection from others. So let's go back to what I read earlier, and then I'm going to tack on another piece. So this story of creation, this Genesis 1, this is actually a newer story. And I know this is going to throw some people off. How can the first chapter of the book of the Bible be the newer story? And that's because when we've talked about the Bible, we've talked about it as a library, right? So even though you walk into the library and this is the first book you see on the counter, on the shelf, whatever, right? Dewey Decimal 0.01 or however that works, right? Just because that's the first book you see doesn't mean it's the oldest book. Think of it that way. So what this does, this Genesis 1, it's actually kind of the preamble to Genesis 2, which is the older story. Another way of thinking about it is Star Wars. So, we had Star Wars, like the original Star Wars, which then was later called episodes 4, 5, and 6. Well, where's the 1, 2, and 3? Well, the 1, 2, and 3 got made, I guess, in the early 2000s, something like that. The aughts, or somewhere in there, maybe the late 90s. And, those are newer movies, but they were the prequels. Okay. So think of Genesis 1 as the first 3 episodes, which only young millennials and Gen Z actually liked, but I digress. We'll go back to it. Okay. So God said, let us make humankind, or man, we would say humankind, in our image, after our likeness. They shall rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the cattle, the whole earth, and all the creeping things that creep on earth. Gotcha. Then the important part. And God created the human in the divine image, creating them. So interesting language, creating them in the image of God, creating them male and female. This is a kind of an interesting idea that the original human, who is Adam, is pulled out of the earth, Adamah. So it's a little bit of a pun. It's a bit like a potter at the potter's wheel, right? Like shaping the clay into what would become creation. That's a kind of a way of thinking about it. So out of the earth comes the human, okay? And the human is both male and female. And then eventually there's going to be this split. So think of like a cell that splits, and you get male and female as separate biological sexes. So that's how all of that works. But that's not actually what's the important thing here. The important thing here is this value of God creating human in the divine image. If you're a secularist, you'd say, yeah, because people thought of gods as having hands and feet and legs and whatever. No. That's not it. It's to say that in every generation, there was a belief that there were human beings walking this earth who were made in God's image. Pharaoh is God on earth. The king has the divine right of the king, right? Essentially a God on earth, right? And it's a tyranny, right? If you are the God on earth, then certainly all of us must be subjected to you. But this line, that the human, right? Human as a concept is made in the divine image. That means that all of us are uniquely created through God's energy, right? No one gets to say, well, but I'm the God King. There is no God King. Judaism destroys it with this one line. It's actually between this and we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I think that probably those 2 lines, and I'm sure there's like 3, 4, or 5 more lines in human history that are just profoundly impacted everything. I really do think that's it. Like this is one of those big things that just ultimately shifts us in a way that eventually we can have democracy. It's a beautiful idea that all human beings are made in God's image. And so human beings made in God's image means that this is the ultimate religious value. If you are a secular humanist, I promise you are good in my book. But I think maybe what we need to do is have a kind of religious humanism. Or we might call it, in today's streaming era, humanism plus. It's the extra category in the Patreon, right? That's the higher subscriber thing. Humanism plus. It adds that extra element that brings us from a good life to a holy life, right? As humanists, we can have good lives, you can have meaningful lives, but you can't have holy lives, right? Because you reject the holy. Saying that human beings are made in God's image forces the holy as a construct in a religious life and in a secular life, even, right? A holy life is a meaningful life with meaningful values, no matter where life takes you. The person who's panhandling on the street is made in God's image. The CEO is made in God's image. The mom who's just trying to get through the day is made in God's image. We all have meaning and value and purpose to this world, even if it's not apparent to us all the time. All right, so now I'm going to jump backwards a little bit. I'm going to give you an earlier thing about Genesis, and then I'm going to jump in the future, right? I'm going to go to Genesis 2. Okay, so backing up a little bit from the creation of humanity, we hear this idea, tohu vavohu. Okay, so the universe in some sense exists. When we, by the way, Genesis 1, it doesn't start with like the Big Bang. It actually starts with the creation of the heavens and the earth, which very well could just be our planet. We don't really know what happens before this because Breshit is, in the beginning of God's creating of the world, right? It's not in the beginning. Anyway, that's just a fun fact. Use that at a cocktail party sometime. The earth being wild and wasteful, or unformed and void, tohu vavohu, with darkness over the surface of the deep and a wind from God sweeping over the water. So Judaism and Hinduism actually have a similar idea here of like cosmic water. Okay. And there are these cosmic waters or plasma or whatever, word you want to use. And what God does is not just sort of create things. God's more like an accountant. God is moving this thing into this column and this thing into this column. And somehow through powers of accounting that I don't understand, it all manages to match up. It's a reason why Keela has a treasurer. This is the creation of the world. It's in moving things and putting things in different places. God is less of a creator and more like a producer in that way, which is kind of fun. Okay, but keep that in mind, right? Now, if we jump way far ahead, it says that God settled the human being in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden, to till it and tend to it. Okay, so others, people say work and subdue, work and guard. It depends on how you want to kind of translate that. So it's avodah, which means work, and then you have shamar or shamor, and this is like a guard. And so guard could be literally a guard, or it could be almost someone like a warrior type, or it could be someone who is preserving something. That's another way of looking at it. But either way, that's the human being's job, to till it, to work it, and to watch it. So here in the beginning, right, the beginning, we have a God who is creative and is moving things around and making stuff out of primordial nothingness, right? This kind of vapid, whatever it is, right? And then once the human being is created, you got to do something with the human being. What does Genesis 2 say? This human being is put in the Garden of Eden. We are meant to be creative just as God is creative. God creates all of this, everything, from nothing, from this primordial ooze. We create just as God does, but in our own way. So what this tells me is that being productive, making good use of life, elevates us from existence to living. Right? Because think about it. If you've ever raised kids or if you remember being a kid, like the summertime is the best. I got to tell you, just as a brief pause here, I am so with these children right now. I am that kid who like summer could not have come any sooner, right? That was just, I felt like the world just opened to me when I wasn't stuck in school. And it explains a lot the person that I am today, actually. Maybe we'll talk about that sometime. But I'm so with the kids right now. Like I see the kids, they're out, they're doing stuff. There's kids fishing where they're not supposed to. It's some Huck Finn stuff. I love it. It's so great. I saw kids, they were like using chalk and they were drawing stuff. I'm like, yes, you're living. You're not just stuck at a desk. I love it. Absolutely love it. I am with you 100%. But that's what a good life is, right? A good life is being a productive person and making good use of your time and doing that with other people because, in the summer, you have that burst of energy initially when you get out of school and doing stuff, you're hanging out with your friends. But then they talk about the dog days of summer, right? This is when the kids become like feral and weird, and you almost want them to go back to school, not just for your own sanity, but because they're kind of devolving as human beings. They spend too much time in their room. They're on their phones too much. They're watching too much. In my generation, it was TV, right? The TV and video games. We're going to just absolutely destroy us as people. I can't even imagine thinking now the things that we had no intelligence to them. And now these tools that are rotting kids' brains, those actually are intelligent in a certain way. Oh my gosh. But you kind of devolve, right? And you devolve because you're not being productive and you're not really making good use of this life. Sure, you're beating levels in a video game. Sure, you're being entertained. And again, I'm with the kids, right? Summer's the best, but you're not necessarily making good use of your life. And that's when the kids become kind of weird and standoffish and strange and kind of a little bit moody, whatever. And so you're like, okay, no, it's time to go back to school, right? It's almost August. We're done. We need you to go do something productive, right? And that's just it. My mom lives in an assisted living community. And one of the things that frustrates me about these communities is the lack of productivity, the lack of productive work. Now, they have all kinds of activities. You can make crafts, they do like food stuff, they play games. So there's a lot going on if you choose to do it. But the reality is, it's not productive the same way that it is productive if you live at home, right? You have to make yourself a meal as opposed to having it given to you, right? When you do something that we might think of as a craft project, let's say, that impacts your home, right? You're fixing the roof, right? Or tending to a garden, or a fence needs to be mended, something like that. You're not just doing it to pass time, right? You're doing it because it's something that needs to be done. You are needed by this world. And that's where I think there's some of this problem that we have in society today is that sure we can all make podcasts and we can all putz around, but then we ask ourselves, like, am I making good use of my life, right? Am I going beyond existence? Are we being creative the way that God is creative, and in that way are we highlighting something about us that is divine? Genesis 2:18, God said, "It is not good for the human to be alone. I will make a fitting counterpart for him." And God does what God does and makes two out of one. Now, going backwards in time, because remember, Genesis 1 is the preamble, right? It's the prequels to Genesis 2. We have another thing here. It says, God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. Okay, so again, two different versions of how humanity's created. We're not going to get into that. That's too much. Nevertheless, it's not good to be alone. You have to be with others, and you have to be fertile and multiply. And that's not just how human beings are spawned over the earth. It's about something else. We're not meant to be isolated. Guys, COVID, you remember that? COVID taught us we need to fall in love. We need to marry. We need to create families. And there's a lot of ways of creating families. I'm an example of that, right? My family looks a little different than some. Now, sure, we need our downtime. Absolutely, 100%. I'm not asking you to go like, 110% all the time. But as the author Shalom Aleichem said, life is lived with other people. God blesses humanity, tells them, make more of yourselves, be fitting counterparts to one another. Ezer Kenegdo is the phrase that's used, which is Ezer Kenegdo. You could do like 10 podcast episodes about that. Some people have. So, a disconnection from meaningful values is remedied by seeing yourself and others in the image of God. And disconnection from meaningful work is remedied by giving yourself the chance to be creative. And disconnection from others is simply remedied by finding your tribe. And I hope that Kehila will be part of that tribe in some way. That's the thing about Kahila is that we're not asking to be everything to you. We want to be part of your life. We want Jewish life in your life. We just want to be part of your tribe, right? You join us, we join you. We join all of the parts of you. We want to know what your life is like. We want to help you to be creative in some way and to see yourself as being in the image of the divine. That's very Kahila stuff, I got to say. Now, switching to something like completely different, the Sheva Brachot or Sheva Brachos, depending on who you are. Saying at weddings or Sheva Brachot parties, which we need to bring back. Like this will be not the hill I die on, but like one of many things I find important. We need to bring back Sheva Brachos parties. We need to make that a thing. Anyway, the last of the Sheva Brachot, the seventh, right? It ends with a blessing for a God who created joy, happiness, gladness, jubilation, cheer and delight, love, friendship, harmony, and fellowship. So when we ask ourselves, what do we owe the world? What do we owe ourselves? What's the point of all of this? Well, it's these things. It's meaning, it's creativity, and it's community. What do we owe ourselves? The fullness of our humanity. That's what we owe ourselves. And so my ask is that in your human life, be as human as you can be. Don't reduce yourself to likes and clicks and shares and getting angry and posting because that person clearly needs to be educated on the internet, because that works every single time, right? Every single time you post online, someone goes, amen, 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 right? Thank you for completely challenging me and completely changing me as a person. No, it doesn't happen, right? They're going to vote for who they vote for. They're going to believe what they believe. You can't change it. Certainly not on the internet. It's not going to happen. So don't do it. Don't waste your time. As the kids say, go out, touch grass, especially right now, because, it's the summer and there's butterflies. And I saw a firefly try to sneak into the house. I'm like, yes, firefly season. Love it. Very cool. Yeah. Go be human. Get out of the house. It doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to have a big fancy dinner with all your friends. Just go to a park. Everybody in Richmond has a dog. Go walk your dog. Right? Everybody has a cat. Invite your friend over for a cup of tea. Pet your cat. Right? Maggie and Toes are very good at pastoral care, I might say. I have trained them well. So that's it. That's what I got to say. We owe ourselves our humanity. And if you're interested in any of this, again, Johann Hari's Lost Connections, very good book on why we have the problems that we have. And I hope you'll join us for all kinds of amazing events. Let me tell you all about it. So today is June 4th. So that means we've got some stuff going on next week. So 2 things for Shabbat. So June is Pride Month. And technically, that's not Pride here in Richmond. We do it in September. Like, that's a whole other thing. But the JCC is doing a series of Pride events. Our own June Timber Jones it has a couple of cool workshops going on. And we are going to be hosting on Friday a Shabbat experience. We're going to have myself, Robin, Stephanie, the Rebbitzin. We're going to have someone from Or Atid, so Nasia, who's this really awesome rabbinical student. They're super cool. They're like very much online and do cool content around Judaism and being a bit neurospicy and being a Jew of color and all these other things. Very, very cool. Got to check out Nasia. So Nasia will be there, and then a bunch of other people. Our friend Avi is going to be there. It's gonna be a thing. Like, we're all going to have this like potluck version of a Shabbat service. We're all going to go up and do a little thing. It's going to be about 40 minutes. It's not going to be terribly long. And then what's going to happen is there's going to be a dinner, and that dinner is not like an us thing. It's not our dinner. It's the JCC's, but us and the JCC's young adult group and Next Gen, which is another young adult group. We're all trying to get people to come to this thing. I just found out that even though there's 2 young adult groups that are helping to promote it, it's actually not a young adult thing. And I know that's a little confusing. I know there's people who are like, wait, I thought this was a young adult thing, but it's apparently an everybody thing. So that means everybody should come. Now, Important thing, you've got to RSVP on the JCC website. I know this is confusing. You're used to just RSVPing on our website for stuff. No, no, no. You've got to RSVP on their website because, again, this is JCC stuff that we are participating in. So don't get thrown off. So that will be the Friday night. Saturday morning, we're going to be at Second Arrow. We're going to do a brunch. There's going to be prayer, and there's going to be some learning, and we're going to sit on the floor, and it's going to be very yoga-tastic. So I hope you'll come to that. So Friday night, Erev Shabbat, we'll have the service that we're all going to do together. And then those of you who want to can come to the dinner. I think it's across the hall even. And then the next day, Saturday, we're going to have a strictly Kahila type of thing. At our favorite place in Churchill, which is Second Arrow. So I hope to see you at all of that stuff. Also, we're coming up on the end of our fiscal year. So our fiscal year, this is where we start thinking about what our events are going to be for the next 6 months. It's where we start to think about how we want to fundraise, how we want to prioritize our budget, different types of programming we want to do. It's where we start looking for lay leadership. So if there's anything that you're interested in, there's anything you want to do, if there's anything you feel we should be doing, just reach out. Let us know. The big board meeting is June 28th. So try to catch us before then. Otherwise, it won't quite have the impact that you want it to. Reach out to us. Let us know what you're thinking. And also, friends, I'm going to need your help because this doesn't all just happen. There's not this like one big donor who pays for the whole thing. Like this thing I'm doing right now, about 15 minutes before I have a meeting. This is something that we do for you because it matters to you. And if it does, I hope you'll give a gift. And there's a little thing here. If you're, however you're listening to this, if it's like Apple or Spotify or whatever, there's a link there in the description and it goes right to our donation page. And I know I get it. The problem with giving something away is that then people are like, well, you're giving it away, so why should I pay for it? Respect. I get it. That's how we're oriented. Or it's, well, I enjoy the free stuff because I can't give however much money a month. Doesn't matter. Give $3, something, $3 a month. That's fine. You can afford it. I promise you can. Give a little something just to make sure we know, hey, there's people out there and they're into this stuff. Because I don't want this to go away just because we don't know whether you like it or not. So let us know. We want to know your thoughts. We want to know how you wish to contribute to this community with your time, talent, and treasure. And most of all, remember, you matter. Thanks a lot.